Alright, this is a walkthrough for the achievement once, twice, three times Malady. This is on the level Infested, where you have to kill you have to accomplish the mission before the Terrans gas the platform for the third time. That gives you about 16 minutes in game time. This is a fairly difficult achievement depending on how you try to go about it, and I just want to say up front that I'm not going to do this the coolest way possible, the most Gosu way. I'm going to do it the way that your grandma could pull this off, and that's with Banelings. So here's the build I went with for Kerrigan. I chose this build because it gives her quite a bit of survivability. I like Zergling Reconstitution because we're going to use a lot of Zerglings. Chain Reaction gives you a lot of damage. The Twin Drones help you get the base going really quickly. I like the Heroic Fortitude and the Fury. These abilities let her do a bunch of damage without you having to micro her a whole lot. And as far as the army goes, I chose the only ones that really matter are Zerglings and Banelings because that's all we're going to use. So I chose the Swarmling because that lets you get more Zerglings at a time and for less money. And then for the Banelings, get the Hunters because that lets them hop up the ramp, and that will be really useful in this level because of the topography, I guess it's called. Also there on the Banelings, if you didn't notice, I did use Corrosive Acid. That's the one that makes your primary target take 100% additional damage. Definitely take that one, because we're going to be walking through a bunch of siege tanks and Thors and Marines and Firebats, and a lot of our Banelings are going to get killed, so we want to make sure the ones that do get there do as much damage as possible to the final target, because we don't care about splash damage. So of all of the mutations for the Baneling, definitely take Corrosive Acid for this. Alright, once we get into the level here, there's no rush. I haven't actually studied this to prove it, but I'm pretty sure that none of this timing here affects the timer, because it's when the Terrans gas the platform for the third time, and that timer won't actually start until you finish this first little stage and get your base going. So I don't think you're in any rush here. So I would go ahead and use Neural Parasite on everything that you can. You can keep consuming all the infested Terrans and just Neural Parasite everything. Go as slow as you want. There's no rush. The more stuff you Neural Parasite, then the bigger army you have when you start. But go ahead and use your Infestors and your Neural Parasited army and take all this stuff out. This part is not complicated, and there's nothing you can really do to mess it up, I guess, except for completely die, which wouldn't be very easy. So while we're waiting for that part, I'll point out that I did try to beat this level a couple of times. I tried it with Mutalisks, built up a whole army of Mutalisks, and tried to skirt around the outside of the map. And that doesn't work very well because there's a bunch of turrets in the way, and they have that stupid mutation from Wings of Liberty where they do area of effect damage, and it is devastating for Mutalisks. I also tried building a regular army of Hydras and Roaches and just kind of powering through everything, and while you can definitely do it that way, there's a bunch of walkthroughs on YouTube that do it just with a regular army composition. You can do it that way, but it's not as easy. It's not anywhere near as easy as doing it with Banelings. So that's the way we're going to do it in this walkthrough. So once you get your base going, start pumping out your drones and get everything going, and take your army in the meantime and come up here and start expanding. Now, the reason we're pushing out with our army is not necessarily to get the Infestors to the Virophages. We don't care. You don't actually have to get any of them to win the mission. All they do is help you spawn more Infested, and we really don't care about any of that. So the reason we're pushing out is to get the expansion to the north, and that's just going to help us get a bigger army before we have to push out. So definitely push out as quickly as you can, and we're going to take over that expansion. And it's easy to hold. Pushing out isn't going to make anything any more challenging. They only send units to come attack your Virophages a couple of times, and they do it in dropships anyway, and they attack specific Virophages. So there's the first one. I sent some Zerglings down there to go fend it off, and of course that doesn't work because it's all Firebats. So I had to send Kerrigan to clean it up, and then you can just get it again. But again, none of this is really important. Your whole goal is to get your base and economy up and running so you can pump out a lot of Zerglings and ultimately Banelings. So that's what we're gonna do. The gas, I was slower than I should have been getting the gas up and running. At some point here I end up not having enough gas and have to panic and get a bunch quickly. So you could probably max out at like 200 out of 200 on Banelings, but I end up doing it here with only like 150 or less, and didn't have much of a problem. So that's what we'll do. So once you do push up there to that expansion, I grabbed a couple of siege tanks that I infested and parked them up on top of that ramp. Still send periodic army to come and attack you from there, and so you'll want a little bit of protection for that base. And the siege tanks will do that nicely for you. Down there, you'll notice I threw down my 2 evolution pits to start getting my evolutions going for the Zerglings. There's only 2 levels. You can't go all 3 on this level, so you don't need a whole bunch of time. You're not in a big rush to get those started, but the sooner the better, I guess. And so to make sure that our Banelings do as much damage as possible to that final target. So now it's mostly just a waiting game. We're gonna shortly get that expansion up, and I'm gonna throw down a couple of additional hatcheries here. I'm gonna end up with a total of 5, just because Zerglings take a lot of larvae. So the additional hatcheries help you get the larvae that you need. So what we're going to end up doing here once we get the expansion in place is push out with Kerrigan. If you remember in the beginning, I talked about the particular build that I chose for Kerrigan being because of survivability. So I'm actually not going to build any other army. I'm just going to try to push out with her. After watching this video back again, I actually kind of wondered whether you couldn't win the entire level with just Kerrigan. And maybe I'll try that just to see if it's possible. Because I wasn't really focusing on Kerrigan. I had in my mind that I ought to push out and clear as much as I can, and I kind of played around with it here and there, but I kind of wasted some time trying to clear up attackers from my virophages, and I could have set, you know, spore crawlers and spine crawlers there to defend, and I didn't. So I could have spent a lot more time running Kerrigan around and actually killing stuff, and I wonder if you couldn't just win the entire level with her. But in any event, we're just going to try to clear out as much as we can with her. The less enemies that our Banelings have to run by on their way to the prison or lab or whatever it is we're trying to destroy in this mission, the more that we'll get there and actually do their damage. So bunkers especially will take a big toll, in the siege tanks. So I suppose you could probably do this build with Crushing Grip, and that would help you take care of a bunch of the siege tanks, because Kerrigan can one-shot them at that point. You could probably do Leaping Strike too, because of the ramps on our way up to our target there. It's kind of a problem. That's why the hunters are so useful with the Banelings, so they can just pop up and get over and around all the ramps. So anyway, like I said, you don't have to get the virophages. If you do, if you have spare time, I mean, like I did, I cleared that out. You might as well send the infestor there and get it. It will spawn infested Terrans, and they'll support Kerrigan as she's kind of pushing out while you're waiting to mass up your Zerglings and Banelings. But you definitely don't have to. So we're down there building a large army of Zerglings. If you didn't know, you can actually just hold down the letter to, like for E, for example, you can select a whole bunch of Zerglings and just hold down the letter E, and it will, you know, really quickly, your repeated key press will go really quickly and morph them all to Banelings, so you don't have to sit there and press it 150 times. And you can do the same thing when you're building Zerglings from your hatchery. Select your larva and then just hold down Z, and it'll burn through them really quick. That's a nice tip when you're trying to do massive amounts of Zerglings or Banelings. So you can tell there I wasn't even confident with how powerful Kerrigan is. I kind of tried to run away, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't run away. There's marauders on me, and so I turned around and attacked them, and it turned out, you know, they just melt to her. So that helps. Try not to make that mistake. I left my Banelings sitting there, and they all jumped in and attacked those fire bats. So try to keep your Zerglings and Banelings as out of the fight as possible, so that you can get that number as big as you can. I just probably burned through 5 or 10 Banelings there because I wasn't paying attention. So anyway, you can see the heal comes in handy here. Kerrigan's out there solo and stuff. She takes damage, and the heal can keep her alive through a lot. About the only thing that can give her real trouble is more than just a Thor. A Thor with some other support can kind of give her a run for her money, but everything else she'll just handle. So we're running. We're coming up on the last gas here. And I finally got all my gas harvesting at the Vespene geysers, so I got my income going as good as I can. So now it's just a matter of waiting. My upgrades are almost done on my lings. So you just kind of play around with Kerrigan, get as much as you can with her, and then when you're about out of time, send your Zerglings. I kind of like to morph my Banelings as I go. That way I don't end up with 200 psi worth of Zerglings and not enough minerals or gas to turn them all into Banelings. So I like to morph them as I go. It's kind of the same principle on the speed bump level. If you watched my tutorial for that video, build the mutas, but morph them to broodlords as you go, rather than building all of the mutas that you think you want and then trying to morph them into broodlords at the end. If you end up overbuilding on the mutas, then you run out of resources to morph them into broodlords. So here we go. We've got something like a minute left, so I'm going to take these Banelings and run them in. Now, you'll notice that I did a move command and then shift attacked that building. If you don't do that, they will attack everything they encounter on their way. I don't know if that's a function of just the AI for Banelings, or if it has something specific to do with that target that we're attacking. But I did notice that if you just right-click on that target, the Banelings will attack everything in their way. Which probably would be fine. There was probably enough Banelings that maybe even more would have survived if I'd attacked everything, but as it was, it worked out. So, not a lot of work, not a lot of finesse, but like I said, this is something your grandma could do. So if you've been struggling to get this achievement, this is one way to guarantee it. It's pretty easy. Thanks for watching, guys.